seems to be starting. Now let me go over here. Ugh. This broadcast is expired. Okay. I think what we'll do is just push. The schedule event expired, but I think we can still go live. We'll just try it, and then if not, the tech gods are not with us. Oh, I can see us. I can see, let me just, they always come back. And also, often it's more in the replay, so it's still worth trying. Now, I do see several live attempts. You're back. So people were seeing us. Okay. Let me just look at if this is a live feed still happening. Ah, yes, we are live. Oh my goodness. Okay. I am live. You're not on the screen. It's my complete embarrassment. But that's okay. It's technology. So, you know what? It's working. Yay. Okay. Okay. So let me just welcome people before I get into the official stuff. Thanks for holding with us, guys. Beverly's here. You are back from Southern California. Elaine Bruce, Lori Sweet. And I've got to mute myself here. Lori Sweet, Lori Kilmartin, Andrea Shapiro. Good. Okay, guys. Can you hear? I assume you can hear me as well, right? And who else is here? Elaine Bruce. Yes. Good. Okay, guys. Yay, live. Okay. I will start. I did not shut the blinds tonight, so we're going to have some major sun in here. But anyway, that's okay. We are working. Whew, okay. Our guest and I have had lots of wine to get this technology working. But that's okay. It's working now. I am so excited because tonight was worth fighting for technology-wise. It's such a good topic. So before I get started, please tell me where you are logging in from. What's in your glass tonight? Is it dry where you are? We've got floods. Oh, well. Patty and Paul have joined us from Virginia. Good. Bert is here. Bert Coutinho. Elaine Peters is here. Dave Head. Bacchus is with us. Yes. Thank goodness. Mark Zuckerberg was being a bit of a pain tonight, but the other tech gods were with us. Excellent. So please tell me, where are you logging in from? What's in your glass? What's the weather like? We've had major flooding. I will just do a little quick turnaround of the camera right here. This is outside my house. That used to be a dry field outside my house. The water is about a foot away from the road, but that's okay. We carry on no matter what here. We are warriors. Okay, so let me introduce you to my guest tonight. Our guest this evening is a contributing editor at Wine Spectator magazine and the author of Thirsty Dragon, China's Lust for Bordeaux, and the Threat to the World's Best Wines. She has a background as a television producer and screenwriter, and she recently finished her first novel. She holds a BA from Yale University in Economics and Political Science, an enology diploma from the University of Bordeaux, and an MA in creative writing from the University of East Anglia. And she joins me live now from her home in Bordeaux. Welcome to the Sunday Sipper Club, Suzanne Mustacich. Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Good to
how are
join
you?
you.
Oh, it's so good to see you too, Suzanne. And I am just going to center you in my shot because, of course, we were trying to make all of this work here tonight. Um, so I'm still sort of multitasking, which I don't believe in, and getting you centered. But Suzanne, just tell us a bit about yourself and what sort of triggered the idea for this book. It's a fascinating topic for a book. Where were you?
Hmm.
What was the moment when you thought, this is what I need to write about?
Well, to be honest, I was looking to write a book. I knew I wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's a lot of fantastic books that have been written about Bordeaux wine. So I was trying to find something that hadn't been done
Yes.
already. And I'm sort of naturally an investigative reporter. I'm naturally someone who digs. And do you have an echo when I'm speaking?
I don't. You might have, but I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as you don't, I'm okay.
Okay, good. Keep
I can
going.
listen to myself echo.
And our viewers will tell us if there's anything that's really strong, like if there's a huge echo. I'll be monitoring the comments for that, so no
Okay,
worries
great. So
there.
people, please let us know if there's an echo.
Yeah.
So I was looking for something really interesting to report on. And I'd been in Bordeaux since, well, I have been in Bordeaux since 99 and always in contact with the wine business.
Right.
So I was aware of the Chinese market growing, and just because on my contacts on the Place de Bordeaux, on the business side of Bordeaux. And then I just saw it sort of take off, and everyone was talking about this overnight miracle, this big success story. And I thought, wait a minute, it's a little more complicated than that. And I had studied modernizing economies and and, and politics at Yale, so I had this approach of of looking at it, this modernizing country and how it was impacting us. So that's really it. I mean, it was a it was a vague idea I had when I started. And I just started investigating and digging and digging and digging. And I thought, okay, this is a book. It's not a long feature story for a magazine, it's a book.
Huh, that's great. Awesome.
But it was the characters too, I have to say. I mean, when you're
Okay.
writing a book, even nonfiction, there has to be a narrative arc. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There have to be turning points. You have to have interesting people. There has
Yes.
to be a climax, there has to be suspense and conflict. And so in a nonfiction book, you can't make it up. So you do all of this investigation thinking maybe something will come of it. And then when it all starts to fall into place, you think, okay, yeah, I've got a book.
That's great. I love that. I love the way
Yeah.
you've framed it. And Suzanne, just to reassure you, I think everyone's hearing us loud and clear, so you don't
Okay,
need to
perfect.
worry
Okay.
about the echo. So great. Good, good, good. People are really excited about this topic.
Well, I think the other thing that is that we always are talking about China now. You can't talk about the future and not consider China. And
Right.
wine is an interesting prism for looking at that, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, we all of us, especially here tonight, understand wine. I mean, you could talk about
That's true.
other industries contacting me and saying, "Oh gosh, I had a very similar experience. I'm in a completely different, trade, but we had a very similar experience."
Oh, really?
So yeah, so really the book it's a way of looking at business with China and growth in China and modernization and Bordeaux, of course. It's a different way of looking at Bordeaux, but I think it's relevant about wine.
Is there a sector that you would say is more closely resembles or aligns with wine where the effect of Chinese investment has been strong?
No, I think you can just even look at minerals. You can look at, and I'm not an expert in those areas, but or windmills. Um, there's different when the Chinese decide that either they want to dominate a market or whether through manufacturing or through just purchasing that commodity, it's like this just big pivot, and the pressure they can put on that market is immense.
Wow.
So I think, I mean, you hear about different commodities being purchased very rapidly by the Chinese. It happens all the time.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, I'm going to take a moment to tell you that Suzanne, she's written a fascinating book, and she has generously offered to give 3 of her books,
Oh,
3
yeah.
copies of her books. Yes, absolutely. Hold it up,
Yes.
Suzanne. There you go. There it is, right up to the camera there. Wow, that looks like a meaty read. That looks like terrific, like crime fiction, but not fiction. But what I wanted to say, folks, is that you could win one of 3 copies. You only have to do 3 things. Here they are. So it's really simple. You know the drill. And as always, I'm sure you know friends, family who would love to get in on this conversation, whether they can join us right now or they watch the replay. And if you're watching the replay, you can still do.
Wow. No, I don't have any audio.
Of course, if you want to take your food and wine pairing to the next level, you can join me in a free online video class at nataliemclean.com/class. All right. Now, Suzanne, okay, there we go. I was feeling a buzz there, but that's okay. So, Suzanne, let's get into the book itself. What was the most surprising insight that you discovered while writing it?
I think what was interesting was just how little the two sides, if we can loosely say, the Chinese side, the mainland Chinese side, and the Bordeaux side understood each other. I mean, there was a lot of misunderstandings and just culture clash in terms of business culture of how they did business. And I found that very surprising because you have, really capitalist. There's a real clash of cultures. I'm sorry, I'm getting all sorts of audio
feedback. Yeah.
Okay, now it's better. Okay.
Okay, it's good. We'll just keep creeping
so I
forward
think
here.
I think that was the main thing, is that when I started digging into it, it was obviously much more complex, and the reasons the Bordeaux felt that the Chinese were drinking wine, and really why wine was developed in China was very different. So
what was those differences?
It was a really complex story, which was interesting.
Absolutely. So was it, did the Chinese suddenly develop a love for Bordeaux, or was it speculation and making money? I mean, what was the primary motivation and what triggered it?
Well, I think, what's kind of interesting is that wine was one of the first joint ventures in China, and it still is. It's Dynasty. There's a big wine company called Dynasty, and that was a joint venture with Remy Martin.
Oh, and when did that start?
That started. It was I think the second joint venture, so around '79.
Oh wow!
So it was right when China opened up, and there was no demand for wine, and there was no one had any money for wine. The annual income at that time was about 180, 190.
Oh wow!
Even so, there was, but at the same time, you have Bordeaux, which they have this very kind of unique way of commercializing their wines through something called the Place de Bordeaux, which is a virtual trading platform. There's no place, there's no hall. It exists in their imaginations. It exists because they wanted to exist. It's their culture. It's their business culture. Huh. So you have intermediaries. You have the producer, and then you have a broker called the courtier, and they take 2% on every transaction. And then you have the négociant, which is a wholesale shipper. Okay, and these wholesale shippers, their reason for being is creating markets. So anywhere where they sense that someday someone might have money to buy a luxury product, they're in there. So they automatically gravitate. So as soon as China's opening up, they want to be there.
Right.
And it's really just a lot of different reasons. There was particular people who had dealt in Bordeaux wine from Hong Kong Chinese, who were part of the very first joint venture hotel in Beijing. And you had to supply wine that was for foreigners who were there on expat packages. So they had expense accounts. And what did they want to drink, these business people, when they were there living in the Beijing hotel? And what were the Chinese going to use to entertain with? They needed something where they wouldn't lose face, where it would be respected. It would show some sophistication. And Bordeaux, with the 1855 classification, is very, very easy for people who don't necessarily know anything about wine, right? They know if they take out one of these classified grows, it's going to be impressive to the business person from London or Ohio, or wherever they're coming from Ontario. They go, oh, that's a nice bottle. Great. They know what they're buying, or they feel special. So it was a lot of things. It was Bordeaux's business practices that put them right there as China opened up. It was the Chinese need for gifting, need for a gift that was appropriate.
It is a gifting culture. Why is that? Like, where did that come from as opposed to North America? I mean, sure, we give gifts, but why is it so central to the Chinese culture, the gifting?
It just is. It's just how they, it's just part of that culture. It's how they show favor. It's how they, because it's not just, it's, you gain respect by having chosen the right gift, the appropriate gift.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And did they sort of match the gift to the recipient? Like you were saying about the 1855 classification. Of course, we have the 5 top gross ICAM at the top. Like, would the highest, maybe government official or foreign dignitary get the highest growth and then tier by tier go downwards?
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of that you were going to give a first growth to the person, the highest person on the food chain. Yeah, that's the person who's going to get the Lafitte or the Margaux or the Haut-Brion or the Latour. So definitely, that made it very easy, this classification. And the fact that it's historical, it gives it a lot of weight for the Chinese. In fact, I think one of the reasons they like Bordeaux anyway is the history. They love the history of Bordeaux.
What is it about the history that fascinates the Chinese?
I think it's because they have such an old culture, an ancient culture, and even though they've gone through, of course, tremendous hardship through the Cultural Revolution and war, they have a great deal of respect for old cultures. And even though French culture isn't as, what we think of as French culture isn't as old as ancient Chinese culture, it still has there's royalty, there's big chateaus. They like all of that. They like all the pomp and circumstance. They love it all.
Wow.
In fact, even when I've been to events here, I've been to a couple of events where the Chinese tycoons have bought an estate and they've invited lots of people. And I was at one event and they had rented out the room in a really beautiful, grand room at the Place de la Bourse.
Okay.
And they had everybody dressed up in pre-revolutionary gowns and men in hose and everything. Wow. This is sort of interesting. But this was their idea of France.
Interesting.
They love it.
Wow, a fascinating cultural clash. I mean, with wine at the center of it. That's just a great pivot point for a book. I just want to welcome Jason Davies is here from the UK and Jane Staples is here from Ottawa. I'm glad you guys can hear us. Peter Nielsen's here, Andrea Shapiro. Okay, folks, that's great. I'm glad you're hearing us. So they're hearing us just fine as long as I don't switch off the screen from you,
Okay.
Suzanne. So we'll just keep going. That's great.
So it's just a few things. So there's Bordeaux that naturally tries to drive to break into a new market in the hope that you're going to have money to buy a luxury good. And so what they do is they use their 1855 classification to say these are the top wines. These are the ones you dream of having.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't afford that, but you can afford the other 700 million bottles we produce in the meantime. It's a great marketing plan. It works
Absolutely.
over and over and over
It is
again.
like the top brands, Chanel, Gucci, whatever. You might see the runway with the outfit you could never buy, but you can afford the scarf or the perfume, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It works. And also they understand that there's a desire for luxury goods. And as soon as there's a middle class, there's a desire for a better lifestyle.
Right.
And maybe you can't afford the whole lifestyle, but you can afford part of it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You can't afford the vacation home or even maybe for the trip abroad, but you can buy that bottle of wine, right?
Yeah.
And you can live it for a moment. So you're
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
And so wine is the perfect thing for an aspirational middle class in a place like China, particularly, which was just hungry and thirsty for new products, sophisticated products. And that's what wine was.
That's fantastic. I love how that all came together to create that perfect storm. So let's talk about how dependent is Bordeaux on the Chinese wine market, but also the Chinese investors today. Like, give us some facts and figures around that.
Yeah, I went and wrote down. I got a few facts for you.
Okay.
So if you go back to 2008, because this was a pivot point. This is when the duties were dropped in Hong Kong. So suddenly Hong Kong becomes this, think of it as a platform, a shipping logistics platform for expensive wine. So the wine goes into Hong Kong and then it makes its way into the mainland without those duties on it. So in 2008, that's when it really kind of started to pick up. That's when we really noticed the Chinese buying. So the Chinese market was worth 53 million euros and about 9 million bottles of wine. Today, it's worth 58 million bottles. Whew. Yeah. So in 10 years, it went from 9 million to 58 million.
Wow.
And it was worth 53 million euros, and now it's 311 million.
So it's an important market. Wow.
Yeah, it's about half of Bordeaux wine is exported, and the Chinese market is 23% in volume. Okay. But now, interestingly, Hong Kong is where the most expensive per bottle wine goes, right?
Oh, really?
So in 2008, it was worth 75 million euros, okay? And 4.5 million bottles of wine. So a quarter more in value than China was, but half the number of bottles. So the expensive wine has always gone to Hong Kong.
Right.
Today, Hong Kong alone is worth more than mainland China for far fewer bottles. 10 million bottles worth 327 million euros.
Wow, because it's a business capital and they're just obviously have the affluence?
Because because the import duties are based on value, not volume.
Okay.
In China. So if you're going to order an expensive wine, you're going to try to avoid those duties, right?
Yeah.
Because cheap wine is not that big of a difference, right? A cheap wine is just going to go straight in, right? But the expensive wines is based on value, not volume, which in most countries it's based on volume, right? There's a duty per bottle on the volume. This is value. So all the expensive wines go into Hong Kong and then they're couriered or put in a truck or however they go across into the mainland.
Okay. Wow, fascinating. Okay.
So that's why. So it's the top market in value is Hong Kong. Second is China, mainland China.
Okay.
Okay, and third is the U.S. Now in volume, it's China, then the US, and then Belgium, and then UK. So it's volume. Hong Kong isn't that much for volume. It's not that big.
Right.
It's not a big market for volume, but in value,
Right.
it's number one.
Sure. And did any of this also trigger because of maybe an American decline in demand for Bordeaux?
Yeah, it all happened at the same time, around 2008. So we have the mortgage crisis, right? We have the
Hmm.
banking crisis.
Yeah.
It was, as you remember, it was a terrible time. Banks were folding, restaurants were closing, all business entertainment definitely dried up. People didn't have any money. They're losing their homes. The American market was in a terrible crisis, and there was this, remember, it was reverberating around the globe.
Right.
So Bordeaux has this new vintage coming on the market, the 2008 and 2009. Their customers were folding, couldn't buy.
Hmm.
And so the 2008, which was a great vintage, came out very, very low. The price came out very low. When the remember, Bordeaux sells its wine every spring. The most expensive wines are sold as a futures commodity in the spring. So they release it onto the market, very low price. So if you had any money, it was a good time to buy. The Chinese buyers were just starting coming into that market at this point. The people who bought made a big profit because the prices rebounded very quickly. And it was just at the time when middle class spending was picking up. There were more and more real estate tycoons and everything in China, and they were looking for things to buy, and people were making money on Bordeaux. That was the word. So all these speculators arrived. But part of the reason that happened is because the Americans had been backing off from the Bordeaux. When I talk about the Bordeaux market, I mean the high-end Bordeaux market since 2005, because the prices had just escalated and escalated.
Yeah.
And the traditional markets, like the American market, weren't following that price escalation. And the Chinese hadn't really figured that. They just hadn't figured that out, that other people were backing off saying these prices are crazy. There wasn't even at that point, there wasn't the transparency on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created this big speculative bubble, and the prices just went out of the roof. And people in New York weren't buying. People in London were buying just to sell to China, and it just grew and grew and grew, and then it burst. Yeah.
Wow.
And then it was a very volatile time. So China, even through all of that, so then then things dropped, and then it came up. Demand grew and grew again until 2017, and now it's dropped last year. And what happens is it's a very volatile market, because changes from the government can change things so quickly in terms of consumer demand.
Okay.
Okay.
How does
And
that
there's
work?
always, well, say for instance, when President Xi came to power, there was or just before he came to power, there was starting to be this crackdown on free spending public officials living large on public money. So big banquets, extravagant banquets, and extravagant entertaining. And one of the things they were cracking down on was expensive alcohol, specifically expensive alcohol. So that was like a word to all of those, not only the entrepreneurs who were courting the officials, but the officials who were also throwing their banquets, that no more expensive alcohol. It would be politically unwise to be seen with expensive alcohol. Well, so then suddenly you have no demand, because people aren't drinking the wine. By and large, they're not drinking it, they're gifting it.
Right.
And I can remember talking to this really interesting couple of traders, husband and wife, who traded in all different kinds of things, and wine was one of them. And it's through them that I really learned a lot about how how they got cash out of China. And I can remember shopping with them one time in Paris, and they were just like in less than an hour, they spent probably over 100,000 just in watches. They just needed to get rid of the cash.
Wow.
So it was, and also it was interesting through them and through other people. I learned about the gifting. For instance, said for the governor's wife, you couldn't give a Louis Vuitton bag; it had to be Hermes.
Huh.
There was no point showing up with anything but Hermes. I'm
Wow.
like, how many Hermes bags must she have by now? It didn't matter. It probably has a whole walk-in closet for them. It was just really very interesting to me. And these traders had quite a network for distributing through their business clients for other products they sold. And so I was asking about, I saw them fairly frequently. So I was asking about how much wine they were buying. They said, well, actually, we don't really need to buy any because we're rebuying. So the government officials would receive cases of wine every week, cases and cases of wine. Well, they didn't drink it and they didn't really need it. So they would sell it back. So these traders who were used to be buying from Bordeaux would just rebuy the wine that had been gifted to the officials, and then they would resell it to entrepreneurs who are then re-gifting it, of course, to other officials. So it's just, so there's this glut. You can just imagine this huge glut. So
and
people aren't uncorking it and drinking it.
Right.
Is it really consumption? It's not consumption, is it?
Exactly. And if all this regifting is going on, but also if are there large, vast stores of
a speculation too?
Yeah. So is that going to eventually crash the market for Bordeaux
and
the prices?
Well, there's a couple of things. Bordeaux got too greedy, and the prices just went up and up and up and up, and nobody else was following except for the Chinese. And then the Chinese watched the prices start to drop. And then it happened also at the same time as the anti-graft, anti-corruption campaign started. It was the perfect storm, you might say, that crashed it.
And this anti-graft campaign, was that inside China or?
Yeah, that was inside China. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's really had a huge impact. So the good thing is that there's less emphasis on the top end wines, the most expensive wines, and there's more of the middle range wines being shipped and hopefully being consumed as younger wine consumers are coming into the market, younger people who are just generally trying wine the way they try other products. And they buy online, which is terrific. And they try wines from all over the world. They're very curious. I think they're very like North American wine consumers, I think, in that sense.
How so? Oh,
well, they're open to any wine region. They're very, there's a curiosity factor. So they'll think, yeah, I'll try that wine. I've never heard of it. Didn't know they even made wine. Okay, I'll try that. So it's.
And is it just an old stereotype that the Chinese mix Pepsi Cola or Coke with Bordeaux?
No, it's because they don't like it.
It's not sweet enough?
Think of it. Yeah, it's like, think of a wine cooler. They make wine coolers with their wine, right? They add some 7-Up or something to make it a wine cooler. I think very few actually really like wine. And that's what my Chinese contacts tell me, and my Hong Kong Chinese wine traders tell me, is that very few Chinese people go home amongst their family and open a bottle of wine.
Right, because they didn't grow up with it. It's not part of their culture, just like it isn't for northern latitude, North America or European. It's a beer or whiskey culture or hard liquor.
Which is what the Chinese culture is too. It's hard liquor and beer.
Exactly. And I've even heard there could be an enzyme or something that is difficult to process wine with some Asian consumers. I'm not sure. I don't know all the science, but so they weren't amenable, but they still wanted to be curious and to try these wines.
And now younger people are starting, in their 20s, are starting with wine.
Okay.
Because it's considered kind of international, sophisticated, urban thing to do. So they're likely to be kind of what I was called real wine drinkers.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay.
But I think middle age and older, no, they didn't grow up with it.
No.
And even there's still it's really frowned upon for women to drink alcohol.
Is it still?
Yeah, yeah.
And why
Well,
is
for
that, just
certainly middle
tradition?
age and older, yeah, it's frowned upon.
Wow.
It's
Uh,
pretty racy.
right.
So, when I talk to young Chinese women, I say, what do your family think about you working in the wine business? They think, my mother thinks it's a really racy thing to do. We don't talk about it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. But
incredible.
that same woman, interestingly enough, said to me, she goes, how do you expect us, though, to have a conversation? She goes, my grandmother had bound feet. My mother survived the Cultural Revolution. And I have now an apartment in Bordeaux.
Hmm.
It's just how can we speak to each other?
Wow.
So,
Yeah, what a summary. Oh my goodness. All right,
yeah.
Suzanne, this is fantastic. I just want to acknowledge that Joe Murphy has joined us, and Gus Clemens, who writes about wine in Texas, is
Oh,
here.
great.
Yeah,
That's a good market for Bordeaux there.
it is, isn't it?
It is.
He is syndicated to a lot of different newspapers throughout Texas. Sue Ann Staff is here. She's a winemaker in Niagara. I just love how all
Right.
the different people are here. Linda Alexander is here from the U.S. Lynn Vanderlyn is in Ottawa. Oh no, she's in San Diego. She's enjoying a lovely Bordeaux blend from La Mesa. Oh, okay. So maybe it's a California blend. Folks, I just want to also remind you that our guest, Suzanne, has very generously agreed to offer 3 of her books. Terrific book, got such great stellar reviews. So she's offering 3 books tonight. So you know what you need to do if you want to get a copy of her book. So here is the first step. You want to let people know, your friends and family, or maybe even a group, about this conversation. It's okay that we're coming up to the close of this, but that's okay because they can watch the replay. And for those of you who are watching the replay throughout this week, between this broadcast and our next one, 2 weeks from now, you can still qualify. And you want to also let them know why they want to join.
Oops.
Went super fast, Suzanne. I haven't even covered any of the questions I got to. I mean, I was listing. But it's just so fascinating. I still want to
Did
dig
you hear about the
into.
counterfeiting? Usually
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
let's
people
talk
hear
about
about.
counterfeiting. Let's talk about counterfeiting.
Okay.
So,
Well, I think it was one of the funnest chapters to write in the book
okay,
was,
good.
okay, because I had some really interesting things to do. I get to meet interesting people.
Yes.
And for anyone who reads the book, I will say that the people who are in it are there because they ended up being the people who could tell the story the best.
Very
Okay.
colorful characters.
Yeah, very
Yes.
colorful people. And they weren't chosen because they're my friends or anything like that. It really came through the reporting, the investigation, that these were the best people to tell the story.
Hmm.
And I had a hard time explaining to them that it was narrative nonfiction. It should be like an exciting novel. And I think that, they were all pleased. They were all surprised, pleasantly surprised, I would say. I think they thought it was a very kind of dry business book. And I kept telling them, no, you're a character on the page. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, that'll be fine, Suzanne. I'm thinking they really have no idea. So anyway, I think one person though who really had, well, 2 people I would say who had really had a sense of adventure. And I think they're tremendous. Meet them. One was the investigator, Nick
Oh,
Bartman.
yeah, this
Yeah,
intrepid
and he was
investigator.
well, and I was really surprised that he met with me, first of all. And it was a little bit cloak and dagger how we met.
Really? Was it
Yeah,
like in
yeah,
a
yeah.
garage deep throat style? No.
No, it was in a pub in England, but
Oh,
it was
that's suitable. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I flew over there, and it was, he showed me some of the tools of the trade and everything, and I was lucky that I can't believe really, I had to kind of dig to find him, to find a contact with him. And I was really surprised when he replied and he was willing to meet with me.
And he's
But
on
I
the
was,
trail of the counterfeiters. Like
yeah,
he's
well, this is what he does. This is what he's
okay.
done for over 30 years.
Wow.
investigates IP infringement in counterfeiting in China. This is what he does. So I was lucky that it was sort of the end of his career. So he was willing to share a lot of information. And we didn't know if we were going to use his real name until right up at the point of we got to publication, just before we were going to, finalize the book. Wow. We'd given him the option. And he's a lawyer. So I let him, he was the only person that I allowed to see any part of the book before publication. But I just thought, no, let's just let him see the chapter about him. And it was funny, he only changed like 3 words.
Really?
Which I thought, yeah.
Okay, so and what 3 words were those?
Well, no, and they weren't even what I would have guessed. Yeah.
Okay, so what were those 3 words? Do you remember?
But they were not what
that's right. You can't tell us because it's like he didn't want them in there. Okay, so.
Exactly. No, but for instance, it was similar to something like this. It seemed so innocuous that you thought, really? And for instance, it was very similar. I was writing about a very famous winemaker and his estranged wife. And they don't live together. He lives with his mistress. I'm like, it's an estranged wife, right? So I said, estranged wife. And I was told through the legal review of the book that might be considered, you might not take that very well. And I thought, well, what else do you call it? And so I called, I know his estranged wife very well. So I just called her up and said, so how would you like me to phrase this? She says, no, I'm his wife. I'm like, okay. So I did that. So it's things like that. Sometimes it's a word where you see something, you feel you're being very not judgmental, just honest, just sort of plain speaking, mm-hmm. And it might be something that someone's sensitive about.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Nuances. So yeah, but Nick Bartman was really great because he just spent his time undercover in disguise dealing with these counterfeiters. So he would go in and he has an appearance that could be so many different nationalities.
He blends in.
He really blends in. He could be a lot of different nationalities. And he would go in as a wealthy guy looking to do a deal, needing some wines. And the same people who might be producing the legitimate wines are also counterfeiting. And what he could really talk about is how the counterfeiters how it went from being sort of sloppy, obvious fakes to very sophisticated, very, very sophisticated. And that's when things are worrisome.
What changed in the sophistication level? What was one indication that they had become really sophisticated?
Well, they stopped making the really stupid mistakes on the label, for instance.
Right. The spellings and the...
Yeah, the spellings. They just would take a real label and just change a few things. And yeah, that's the main one. And the bottles, the packaging, the weight of the bottle, everything. They had really studied it. Really, really studied it. And remember, this is done in a small factory of bottling lines. This isn't some kind of mom and pop kind of thing. This is mechanized. This is a business plan. And if you shut them down, they don't suddenly go into something honest. I mean, this is what they do. They counterfeit things.
Wow.
And if it's not wine, it will be something else.
Huh. That's quite the
industry. They counterfeit, yeah. And so they go to the printer. There are printers who print legitimate wine labels, and they print for the counterfeiters too. They print whatever needs to be printed. Yeah.
Suzanne, we have to have a part 2 because here we are at 5 to 7. Like it's 5 to 1 in the morning your time.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, you need to have some sleep.
Yeah.
I really appreciate.
Well, if there's any questions, people should write them, and I'll respond.
And where can we reach you? What's your website? Where can we buy your book?
My website is my name, SuzanneMustacich.com. Suzanne.com, or
Okay.
on Twitter. People contact me through Twitter too. That's
Good.
really easy. And that's just S Mustacich. And Amazon or any online retailer has the book.
And we'll put all
Okay.
these links in under this Facebook live video, but also the blog post that we created on the site. Suzanne,
Right.
thank you so much
Thank you.
for
This was
spending
really
this
interesting.
time.
Sorry about the
Yeah.
technical stuff. I hope it wasn't me. I
No, it's
rebooted my
not you.
computer and it wasn't me.
Let's blame Mark Zuckerberg, okay?
Okay.
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 Everybody's blaming him these days. This was a great chat. I really
Okay,
appreciate
great.
your time, and
It was fun.
yeah, get some rest, and we have to talk again because I have to ask you the other 56 questions I didn't get to.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a
Okay.
lot. Okay.
Bye for now,
Good night.
Suzanne. Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Wow, that was a great conversation. Seriously, I did not get to all the questions. I really would love to chat with her again because that was terrific, as were your comments and questions coming in. So I want to acknowledge those. Let's see, Jane is really enjoying the episode. Lori asks, the same people who are making the wines were also the ones counterfeiting. Did I get that right? So we will explore that. Really, I need a part 2 with her. That was just, it felt like skimming the surface, like a stone that skips the surface. I want to come back to her. All right, so we persevered. We got the tech working. Sometimes this tech nearly knocks me out, but I love the connection that we have when it works. So 3 weeks ago, because we had the Easter break, we were on live with Rajat Par, the sommelier to the stars in San Diego, who now owns his own winery. He is giving his book, The Sommelier's Atlas of Wine. I don't know that she's here live tonight, but the winner is Lisa Stahl. She is actually in California. So, Lisa, congratulations for her share. And she told folks why she thought the conversation was worth joining. So take a moment, right? Do these 3 things because we are going to give away 3 copies of our guest book. I want a copy, but I will not end run you, I promise. I will get my own copy. This is all you have to do, right? Because everybody can watch the replay and, you want to tell friends and family. Free online video wine class about tasting wine like a pro or upping your food and wine game. All right, guys. Whew, we need part 2. I agree, Patty and Beverly. We need part 2. Honestly, I was so busy in my mind figuring out the tech that I got to the first 3 questions I intended to ask her, and literally there's a list of fascinating questions. We need to come back to this. I want her to come back again. Sarah Barkley Rosenthal has joined. Sarah, we're just wrapping up, but you can watch the replay, okay? So folks, thank you so much for being here. We are going to be back in 2 weeks. We're every second Sunday now on the Sunday Sipper Club with Elizabeth Gabby, and she's going to talk to us about the rosé revolution. Why rosé had a very important pivot. Of course, that's seasonal. We're all drinking rosé now. So join me then. It's going to be a great chat. It will be Mother's Day Sunday. I warned her about that, but she said every day is Mother's Day for her. So good on you, Elizabeth. And we'll have our little glass of rosé on May 12th, Sunday, May 12th. I hope to see you then. All right. Congratulations to Lisa Stahl. Yes, Andrea, we need more. We need part 2. We do. This is, great topic. Feel like I've just skimmed the surface, but we will be back. We'll get her back. Okay, guys? Good night for now. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for sticking with us. I appreciate that you carve out a little bit of your Sunday for this chat. Take care. And yes, Paul, I will keep my feet dry. Claire, summer is coming. Yes. I'm going to watch Game of Thrones as well. All right. Bye for now, guys.